right near a Google. Yeah, exactly. Michael's trying to hone me down on trivia night right now.
No, I'm just
right
asking
now,
you to
we're
explain.
trying to talk about specifically our examples.
I'm asking you to explain the point that you brought up. And so what people usually do is they say, well, look, I'm sure that there were all different types of marriage throughout history all over the world. And what I'm telling you is, there actually hasn't been.
So you're telling me that a Catholic priest are the people who created like a certain ceremony within the Mayan culture? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that if you want to listen, I'm happy to tell you exactly my point.
I'm listening. Ears are open, Michael.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mindy.
For all of history, everywhere in the world, until roughly 2001 in the Netherlands, every single culture, every polity has believed that marriage is the union of a man and a woman, ordered toward the procreation of children. And that's what it has always been.
You're saying that's the specific objective of what marriage is?
Because that's what
for thousands of years, marriage has been used for property transfer. That's what marriage is
also. It's also used for the mutual support of the spouses, but it is in principle ordered toward the procreation of children. That's what distinguishes it from other kinds of relationships.
Would you say that there's an aspect where love is important, that's specifically within this current culture? Would you say that you love your wife?
I do, but now.
Okay, well, that always hasn't been the case, specifically when it comes to things like
there are plenty of people today who don't love their wives.
That's absolutely true.
I suppose the difference
as I just mentioned, that love has not always been something that's recognized,
right.
and even in some couples now.
We love people in relationships that are marital and in relationships that are not marital. We sometimes don't love our spouses. We sometimes don't love people who are not our spouses.
I think the point of what this conversation is, Michael, is we're seeing different motivations in which people actually get married.
But I'm not asking about motivations.
It doesn't have to be specifically for the procreation. It doesn't have to be specifically for property transfer. And in some instances, it can just be the union of people who care about each other.
Okay,
but the fixation and the obsession of same-sex couples.
I care about
just what's so weird, specifically when conservatives claim to be big, strong men. You know, cigar salesmen that are out there presenting this certain image. It's weird how you're focusing more on gay people than oftentimes gay people focus on gay people.
I'm not focusing on anything. I'm not the one who changed the definition of marriage.
You came in here making the claim, hey, all of these marriages that I'm seeing are not legitimate.
No, I'm saying they're not marriage.
Hurts my feelings.
No, because that's just not what marriage is. Like if you told me that there were such a thing as a square ball.
Yeah, the ball that we're referring to is a yellow ball and a green ball. It doesn't mean that the ball is square.
Now where I think we're confusing our analogies. The reason one can't have a square ball is not because one has an animus against square balls. It's because it's in the nature of spheres and squares that one cannot simultaneously be both.
The fear isn't seeing a gay marriage and saying, oh, boo, oh my God, I got scared. The fear is, oh my God, my rights are being taken away, or the institution of marriage is degraded, specifically because we're expanding it to people who also love each other.
It's because even in principle, two fellas can't make a baby. That's the difference.
As we mentioned, there are people that are infertile that you wouldn't say their marriage is any less legitimate specifically because they can't.
In principle, their marriage is inclined toward the procreation of children.
That's not true. Because we just talked about there were certain instances where marriage is used as a property transfer. It's not for procreation.
But again, it's also
used for. Of his marriages were illegitimate?
I would because I'm a Catholic, but that's a separate issue.
Gotcha.
This is the issue. I love my buddy, right? I love my anchor group. I love my cousins, but I'm not married to them. I have lived with roommates. I wasn't married to them. Many people have slept with people who are not their spouses. That doesn't mean they're married to them. Marriage has to have a definition that is different from all of these other kinds of relationships. And the only one that anyone throughout all of history until roughly 2001 in the Netherlands has ever come up with is that it's a union of a man and a woman inclined toward the procreation of children. And also it so happens that children are raised in a much better way from a man and a woman.
This is a specific motivation that you continue to reiterate and parrot. That is just not true if you look at various examples. Good to meet you, Mindy.
Good to meet you. What was his name? I didn't catch it. That was easy. You got it. How's it going?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. So I am not in this politics world. To be honest, all I know about you is your name is Michael, and you don't marry your cousins.
I don't.
Which is great.
I don't. I avoid that.
So I was taking some notes here on my handy dandy notebook.
Okay.
You're making a lot of appeals to things, appeal to nature, appeal to the dictionary, appeal to the past.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
Anthropology.
I feel like what you're ultimately appealing to is Michael's idea of marriage. And that's fine, right? But
I'm appealing to everyone else's idea of marriage for all of history.
Well, so here's the thing. Haven't there, before, I don't get sidetracked here, but briefly to respond to that, weren't there other ideas in the past that were bad?
Well, there are plenty of ideas in the past that have been bad and discarded. There are very few ideas that have existed everywhere for all of history and continue to exist today, albeit in a slightly different form, that are bad.
So,
right?
but why am I supposed to care that people have believed something for a long time?
Well, because often things that have endured forever everywhere do so because they work or they have some tethering to reality. But in this case,
in terms of reality, I'm glad you mentioned the word reality, because in terms of reality, I'm gay married. Ooh, right? Like, we live in a society where, if you look at polling data, society seems to be okay with gay marriage. And so if you personally don't want to get gay married, you don't have to. But shouldn't we? I mean, I'm thinking, like, what is the point of this conversation?
Because you're not really married. You have a relationship with a man, but you're not really married.
I understand that you think that, and that's fine. But we should structure, because what's the point of this conversation, right? Like, I was kind of falling asleep through like the Plato and Socrates and Italy.
I didn't bring it up. That was the other guy. That wasn't me.
I know, and we'll agree on that, okay? There's the agreement for the thumbnail, all right?
Good.
But like, the point of this conversation
I can make it very practical for you.
That we're deciding how we should conduct ourselves,
yes,
right?
I can make it very practical for you. Children do very poorly when they are raised by two men or by two women, relative to men and women.
My understanding of the literature on this is that that's not true.
What literature are you referring to?
Unfortunately, I was not able to bring notes here. If you look it up after,
I don't have notes either, but I'll tell you.
You can reach out to me after. I can email it to you. We're getting off of my point here, and I don't like it. So I'm going to keep talking now.
I think it's you want it to be practical, and you want to avoid.
We're just
going to
talk over each other. No one's going to understand anything. You talk so much more than me. You're the hero. Let me talk. Come on, Michael. Let me talk. So,
if you want to avoid the point I'm making, which probably is good for your side of the argument.
Okay, if it's good for me, I'm going to do it. So. The point of this conversation is we're deciding ultimately, like, what should our laws be, right? If we live in a plutocratic society where a lot of people have a lot of...
It shouldn't be plutocratic. You mean pluralistic.
Oh, pluralistic. Thank you. See, I'm not a media guy. I'm just a guy. Why am I here? He's a professional. Pluralistic. Thank you, Michael. So we live in a pluralistic society.
Yeah.
And we should have our laws allow people to live the way they want, insofar as we're not impeding on other people's liberties or harming others, right? To my understanding,
so what about the right of a kid to have his natural mother and father? Because when the rubber meets the road in gay marriage, it's not just two people living together. You could always do that. It's not two people doing those things you guys do, that you could always do that. It's the ability to adopt children, and in some cases, acquire children by going to the baby store and purchasing the eggs of one woman, renting the womb of another woman, and raising children, depriving them intentionally of their natural mothers, and that's very wrong. And that does infringe on the rights of kids.
I understand that you believe that.
And all the scientific literature, by the way, backs that up.
That's not true.
It is true.
Fact check that, please.
It is true.
Let's let them fact check that on the video.
I'm happy to fact check it for you right now.
No.
The study that you're referring to is the Michael Rosenfeld study out of Stanford in 2010, and it said that kids raised in gay households did just as well in school as the other kids.
It's not a study.
And it was a major study.
No,
but it was wrong. It had a major methodological error, and it's been corrected by multiple other studies.
I would love to engage with you on that in a
sec. Would you?
Yes, in a sec.
I think you would not like to engage on that.
My point is, the majority of people in society are okay with these things. And society's laws should reflect what the majority of people are okay with.
The majority of people were okay with slavery for much of the 19th century. So should society's laws just reflect that?
Wait, so now things that happen in the past are bad?
Some things that happen in the past are bad, some things are good.
Okay.
But some things are good.
But the thing is,
some things that are happening now are very bad too, and are contrary to reason.
The problem is that slavery is bad. Gay marriage, gay adoption, things like that are not bad.
They are bad.
No.
And gay marriage is non-existent and gay adoption is bad.
Then how am I gay married if it doesn't exist?
You're not.
I'm having an existential crisis after this.
You're not. People have all.
See me? No, you guys see me?
You exist, but gay marriage does not exist.
Okay.
And gay adoption is very bad for the kids. I'm not even knocking the guys who want to do it. I understand there's a natural longing to have kids, and homosexuals in a same-sex union can't create kids, which is part of the reason why it's not marriage. But it's still bad for the kids.
Okay. Well, I thank you for correcting me on the word plutocratic. I otherwise completely disagree with everything you said.
All right. Well,
and I think most people do too, and that's why the laws don't reflect your opinions on this.
Most people around the world agree with what I said.
All right, guys.
All right.
That's it for this claim. Please return to your seat.
Thank you. Thanks. My next claim is that transgenderism should be eradicated from public life entirely.
Hi.
Hello.
Blossom. She, her, hers powerhouse.
Blossom Powerhouse, lovely to meet you.
Yes. Go ahead. I want to know your ideology around transgenderism, something that doesn't exist. It just sounds more like conservative propaganda. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about what you're trying to communicate.
Okay, I think for all of history everywhere, people have understood the human person to have something to do with his body. So like your body has something to do with who you are. Now, there is an alternative view, which is called Gnosticism. It's a view that our bodies don't really have anything to do with who we are, that the body is maybe even evil, and that our true selves have no connection to our bodies. And I see in the transgender ideology a kind of Gnosticism that says that you could look like a man, you could have a man's genetics, you could have a man's genitals, you could have a man's everything. But if you feel on some deep level that you're really a woman, then you are really a woman. And I don't think that's true. And I think that the social effects of that are really bad because it leads to the depriving women of their legitimate rights. In some cases, it leads to rapes, notably in the last few years. And it also leads to women losing their sports competitions and their scholarships. And it's just disordered and false. And it also leads to more people adopting this identity, which leads to very high rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. So it's bad for everyone, and it's not grounded in reality.
Oh, I don't even think you understand what you say sometimes. I don't think you even understand what you say, because when we talk about these rape cases of women in the restroom, they're coming from cis men like you. So let's be very clear where it's coming from.
No, that's not true. In 2021,
excuse me, do not interrupt a black
well,
I'm
just trying to correct you. Well, I would never interrupt a black woman.
No, thank you.
Here's
the thing about me, as a black trans woman, I am not a threat to cis women, and I think it is harmful that you are going around here spewing that rhetoric, weaponizing this rhetoric against trans people.
Weaponizing facts?
Transgenderism does not exist. We as trans people exist. We are 1% of the population, and there is a lot of power in the trans identity, because you are sitting here spewing something to me that doesn't really exist.
I'm not spewing anything. I'm just stating facts plainly.
I have lived experience. You don't, and you never will. But I do have a question for you.
I have lived experience.
What if one of your kids came out as trans? How would you
God
react
forbid.
to that?
I mean, I would obviously love my children, and I would try to do what's best for my children. And the best thing that I could do to be respectful and also to be conducive to their flourishing is to tell them the truth, which is that they're not really girls.
Oh, come on. I can't even imagine your relationship with your children, no shade.
That's great. That's a great relationship.
I just cannot even imagine that. But here's the reality. We exist. Again, people like you do not have the intellectual capacity to hold conversations like this, because in a minute you're going to reduce this down to genitalia, and then we're going to have to shift it somewhere else, because obviously people like you, that's where they go, right?
In a minute, what I'm going to do is correct something you said. When you said that the rapes that have occurred in these bathrooms are cis men.
White cis men, I should say, actually.
That isn't true. Loudoun County, 2021, the big case that actually ended up flipping the state was because there was a boy who wore a skirt, went into the girl's bathroom and raped a girl in a particularly hideous way. And you know what happened? Hold on, don't cut me off. You said you wouldn't.
A cis boy. It was not a trans woman. All y'all do is go back to cis boys. You're always talking about cis boys. I don't understand the fascination with trans bodies and what's happening in the bathroom. It is mostly happening.
I think you're filibustering because you don't want me to tell you what happened in the bathroom.
Who?
Me. I think you're filibustering me.
No.
I think that you're distracting from the fact that a boy wearing a skirt in a girl's bathroom raped a girl.
But not a trans woman.
Well, there's no such thing as a trans woman.
Oh, yes, it is. You're looking at one right now.
I'm looking at.
You're looking at me right now.
With
lived experience.
I'm looking at
lived experience. You are looking at a trans woman who has been transitioning for over 20 years, who has lived experience.
Yes.
You're talking to an activist here.
But your identity is not grounded in reality.
You're talking to somebody that's extremely. Oh, I am reality.
I'm not really talking to anyone because you keep talking over me.
In your head, I'm not, but I am in reality.
Yeah.
I'm here in front of you right now talking to you.
You're confused about your identity.
No, you are confused at the fact that you don't really have any talking points right now, because
then why aren't you letting me speak?
You really don't.
If I have nothing to say, why aren't you letting me speak?
Put me on your show. How about that?
Then it would become your show, I think.
Oh, yeah, I should have a show. I should have a show.
In 2018, there were 2 rapes in bathrooms, and one in Wisconsin, one in Georgia.
From men,
also because of the transgender identity.
But say it, cis men.
If you're going to describe a boy who wears a skirt and goes into a girl's bathroom as a cis man, no, I didn't.
No, you are. This is the example that you run to. Past that, you have nothing.
I've just given you 3 examples.
Nothing.
I've given you 3 examples in recent years.
You don't. You've
Well,
been
that's
struggling this entire
news to
time.
me. Have I?
Yeah, you have.
I think
And I love
the
it.
translady doth protest too much, methinks.
Bye. Goodbye.
Perhaps I'll see you on my show.
Yes, invite me.
Yeah.
Get my email. Tell your people to get my email address. How about
Sure,
that?
yeah.
Good job.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, so if we're gonna think about women getting raped in bathrooms, right? It's a small percentage of trans people that are doing it. I'm not denying that that's happening because it is a reality and it's an awful thing for women to have to go through.
Yeah.
But then what are we doing about the men that are the 93% of sexual violence towards women?
No, hopefully arresting them and putting them in prison.
And what are you doing before that? Why are men the highest percentage for this? If it's such a bad thing for trans women to use the bathroom when a very, very, very small amount of women are being raped by trans women, why are we not having any sort of things before that for men?
I think we try to enforce our laws and protect people from rape, and so we take
Apparently not very well.
No, relatively well. We have a relatively low rate of these kinds of violent crimes compared to other places in the world. But in one area, we're talking about men forcing themselves into women's bathrooms. This is one area where we don't need to allow them to do that. It's a needless risk. It's based on a false view of reality and claims of rights, so-called rights, from confused men that infringe on the legitimate rights of women, not just in bathrooms, but also in sports competitions, also in scholarships, also in just about anywhere else in society. So I think that we have the right to insist upon some kind of reality, because I think not only will that be better for women, not only will that be better for society broadly, but that especially will be better for the individuals who are confused about their gender identity.
And how are you going to prevent trans women from using the female bathroom? How are you going to tell? What's the tea?
There are some giveaways,
Okay.
contrary to what the trans activists
And what are
say.
they?
Men who identify as women, you can usually tell.
And what are they? You can say you can tell all you want.
Yeah,
but
broad
can't
shoulders,
for the
Adam's
most part.
apple, and
Okay.
like the face, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You can tell. You can usually tell.
Usually.
Not all the time, but usually, yeah.
Okay. So if you can only usually tell, what are you going to do to prevent it?
Well, look, a man who doesn't even identify as trans, a man who's just a nefarious fellow, could sneak into a woman's bathroom, and so we have to enforce the law.
93%. Because
Right,
what are you doing about men?
We should enforce the law against people who break it.
And what are you doing before that? Like, why is it a continuous pattern for
No,
men?
we teach
to do
people
this?
in class
You're not teaching
not
them
to-
very well, apparently. I mean,
No.
we have Republican parties who are literally putting a president who is a felon who has sexually assaulted people. What does that say to men?
Yeah, no one really buys that.
I bought it.
No one really buys that. No one seriously thinks that Donald Trump is a rapist. I know we
Right,
pretend
okay.
because the Democrats were trying to
So if
prosecute
we
him
love
4 different
women, why
ways and
aren't we
kicking him off
believing
the.
them? If rape is such a bad thing, why don't you believe women when they say it's happening? Because you're not believing Trump when he says that he didn't do it. You're, whatever, but you're not believing the woman.
Yeah, the claim you're
who said
making
that he
about
did.
Trump obviously was not criminally prosecuted. It comes from about 30 years ago from a woman who previously said that she likes rape and finds it, scintillating.
Gross.
And I know it's terrible. So anyway,
Yeah, no
women,
woman has ever said that.
That
Sorry.
woman did. The Trump's
Okay.
accuser literally said that to Anderson Cooper on CNN. But
Sure, I'm sure a fetish with like consenting adults might be different, but no woman knowingly goes out into this world and says, "I love to be raped."
I'm
I
just
want to be raped
using
by
the
men."
example you brought up, which is the accuser of Donald Trump. But anyway, no one really believes Trump's a rapist. And so your question is,
I
why
do.
don't we? Okay, I guess maybe some people in this room. You ask, why don't we just believe all women all the time? Well, I do think we should give a lot of deference to people who are accusing others of crimes. And so, we have courts of law to adjudicate these claims. So, I don't know. I don't think women are incapable of lying, but I do think that we should protect their legitimate
Even
political
when
rights.
women do lie, though, it's a very, very, very small percentage. Point blank period. So, what again are you doing? Like, you care to claim about women so much because trans people in the bathroom is so scary.
My claim
What
here
are we doing
is
in other areas?
my actual claim here is that transgenderism is false, and we should eradicate it from public life because it's harmful to everyone.
Okay.
That's my actual.
let's-
If you want to
let's
talk about the
start
claim, we're
with- let's
actually
start with that
debating.
then.
Yeah.
What does transgenderism in public look like to you?
It's allowing men to be treated for the purposes of the law as women. It's men taking 900 sports trophies from women in recent years.
And they didn't take 900.
They took 900. There's a report just came out from the United Nations, actually. 890 trophies and medals across 600 women who were competitors, across 29 different sports and 400 competitions. That came out like yesterday.
And they deserved them.
It didn't happen, and they deserve them. Okay, that is the logic I hear from the pro-trans crowd. Yeah.
Thank you. They do deserve them, because I'm sure they followed the specifications for the sport, and that's why they're there in the first place.
Hello.
Hello. So I think I want to start off by asking you what your solution is to, like, the word eradicating. Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, the word literally means to pull up by the root. So not just to have some half measure where you say, you know, okay, we're only going to trans kids after the age of 9, but not under the age of 9. Okay, we're only going to let men who identify as women go into this bathroom, but not that sports team or whatever. I don't think a half measure makes any sense. In fact, I think a lot of the conservative arguments.
You're not answering my question. What's the solution?
Oh, it means to uproot it.
So how do you do that? I want to know how you're going to uproot an entire percentage of people.
I'm not uprooting people. I would return American public law to what it was before roughly 2015.
I don't understand the perspective of how you or the Conservative Party is going to make any sort of progress in eradicating an entire percentage. I think it's just
We're not eradicating people. You're trying to say that because it makes us look crazy.
That's what you're saying.
No, I said I want to eradicate a whole ideology of transgenderism.
Trans people. That is going to be people that you are taking.
Like if I want to eradicate poverty, that doesn't mean I want to kill all the poor people.
I'm not saying
quite the opposite,
I'm not saying that you want to kill. I'm asking you what your plan, like what in the best case scenario, how are you going to get people to stop being trans?
I think we're going to tell boys that they're not girls,
so we're
going to
tell boys that they're not girls, and they're going to listen.
Yeah, basically.
Really?
Yeah, that's what we've done for most of history.
That happened to me, and I can promise you to God that I didn't listen.
Yeah, well, because we live at a time that is affirming the transgender delusion. But if we lived at a more sensible time, probably you would have listened, and you might have had some. And I think we should just return to a more sensible kind of politics.
But what is yours? You're not giving a solution on how you would even be capable of doing
something. Yeah, I think I am.
Like
I think we kick the fellas out of the boys' bathroom. We kick the transgender teaching out of schools.
How are you going to do that?
We just enforce the law as it was before 2015.
There was a law prohibiting trans women to go into the women's bathroom or trans men going into the men's bathroom.
Yeah, it's there in the term women's bathroom.
That's a law.
That's why men can't go in.
That's a law.
Yeah. Yes, there are all sorts of laws against public indecency, for one, against men going into women's sports leagues. There are all sorts of regulations against that, or at least there were until recently. We did not have established in public life transgenderism until very, very recently.
That's not true.
That's
not true. What about the two-spirited people?
What is the two-spirited people?
In the indigenous community, they are. I don't want to get into semantics, but I know that the fact is that there has always been trans people.
Do you know where the phrase two-spirited came from?
I don't. Please enlighten me.
It came from the 3rd annual Intertribal Native American First Nations Gay and Lesbian Americans Conference in 1990. And the woman who coined that term.
I just don't think that that's true.
It's true. The woman who coined that term admitted. Hold on. Let me just finish my point on this. The woman who coined that term, Maya Laramie, admitted somewhat recently that the term two-spirit came to her in a dream in 1990. Now, the Ojibwe Nation actually has translated this term. It's the Niche Mani Duwag, but they translated it from the English in 1990.
How you're capable of eradicating an entire percentage of people by setting laws, because people are
I think you're choosing not to hear what I'm saying, because I'm saying we don't want to eradicate any people. We want to eradicate but the other word is transgenderism, which is an ideology, not a group of people.
I am a transgender person. You can't just
You are
skip
a confused
over that
person, but
I'm
you're not,
babe. I'm so secure in myself, and there's other women in this room that are also trans, have been trans for 20 plus years, 7 years, babe, that know exactly what they're doing.
You're confused because it's not possible for a man to become a woman.
How are you capable of looking at somebody without knowing their bodily autonomy, knowing anything that's going on with their medical history, anything?
Because I know
you know nothing about
I know the
me.
basics of human nature.
You know nothing about me.
I know that you're human. And I know a little bit about human nature. And I know that a boy can't become a girl. So that's what I know.
Does anybody want to take over?
You're tapping out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I did you dirty there.
That was very unchivalrous.
I'll let you. I'll only take a sec, okay? Everyone, just vote me out in like a minute or two. Okay. I want to make a very quick point.
Yep.
That was about a lot of stuff. Oh my God, you'd be great at Jeopardy. All these
Thank
things.
you. Thanks.
Okay, so you mentioned what you would do if your kid came to you and said, you know, in a medical sense, they had gender dysphoria, right?
Yeah,
and gender dysphoria, a specific medical diagnosis where somebody's sense of their gender is not matched to their physical gender-related characteristics and/or the way society perceives them.
Yep.
In a world where gender-affirming care is allowed, as a parent, you still have the right to not have your kid go through that care, right?
In
It's
some
informed
places. In
consent.
some places you don't.
Why is it that every major medical association supports access to this care?
That isn't true. Sweden, Finland, and the UK all just banned the cross-sex or the puberty blockers for children because there was the Cass review of the transgender
You
studies.
walked into my trap, Michael.
Okay. All
I
right,
learned
well-
about the Cass review. The Cass review was done by Dr. Hilary Cass, a pediatrician, on behalf of the NHS.
Yep.
They did not find any evidence of harm, and they did not recommend a ban, and a ban did not happen. All they did was
A ban on
limit
what? A ban on what?
puberty blockers.
On puberty blockers.
All they did was limit access to research settings. France
Why
did a
did- why-
similar national review. They
Yeah.
found the opposite thing. So here's the problem. You ever
So,
watch-
so the
you
UK
ever
did
seen a
the
tooth-
UK did ban it. That's something you said.
No,
isn't
they
true.
restricted it. Have you ever seen?
What's the
okay,
difference?
Guns
They
are
banned it for
restricted.
kids.
They're not banned. There you go. That's the difference.
They-
So, have you ever watched a toothpaste commercial, Michael? This is my line I prepared. I want to say.
okay.
Okay,
Be
so
my guest, yes.
you know when they say 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like what you guys do is you point to the 10th dentist.
Who's you guys?
The
Who's you
people,
people?
who are conservatives and
Yeah, yeah.
advocate your position.
Yeah.
They say, look at the 10th dentist. They're
Yeah,
a
yeah.
dentist, and they think the toothpaste is terrible. What about the other 9 dentists?
but
Why
they-
is there a global
Well, I'll tell you.
medical consensus?
There isn't a global
What
medical
Yes, there
consensus.
Okay,
You know,
GLAAD, Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. I bet you didn't know that acronym. Haha, taught you
I
something.
did not. I did
Google GLAAD,
Yeah.
medical associations. They have
Yeah.
a page where all it is just links to
But-
like 30-something medical
Yeah, yeah.
associations.
But you're suggesting that the review by the NHS of the puberty blockers is the 10th dentist, and it's not. And furthermore, even the New York Times, which I don't read. I don't like the New York Times.
Dr.
But the-
New York Times? Okay,
The-
here's
no,
the
New York,
thing.
hold on. Let me just make this point. The New York Times came out very recently in 2022. The puberty blockers, contrary to what we've been told, are not, in fact, often reversible. That is one of the reasons why you're seeing major restrictions, if you like to call it that, moving toward full bans in multiple countries, is because it causes all sorts of problems for kids long term.
Have you ever met a kid with asthma?
Yes.
So a kid with asthma might be prescribed. I'm sorry, I'm blanking here. This is hard. This is hard. Yes, thank you. It's a steroid, right?
Yeah.
Steroids can have side effects. Doctors monitor for side effects.
Yes.
So puberty blockers can have side effects. Doctors monitor for
But
side
the
effects.
problem is that asthma responds to a real medical condition where you have trouble breathing.
Gender
and
dysphoria is in the DSM.
It's
Okay.
all right. You're out.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
All right. Nice talking
round
to you.
two. Yes, there
Nice
we are.
talking
Yes,
to you.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm happy to continue this if you want.
Happily, yeah.
All right, I added 5 more minutes.
Oh, wow, you guys, thank you.
Wow. Hello,
Hi, I'm Lex.
Lex. Nice to meet you. I'm Michael.
I want to talk about the term eradication.
Okay.
Eradicating trans identities, sure. Trans people is really what you're referring to.
It's not what I'm referring to.
Sure. So I want to chat about where we've also seen that before. Can you guess?
Where? I'm going to guess you're going to say something about Hitler.
Do you want to know the first book burning that the Nazi Party did?
Please, yes.
It was the Library of Queer and Trans History.
It's outrageous. I heard Martin Luther burn Thomas Aquinas' books, which bothers me even more.
It's so funny you want to bring up Martin Luther right now, but that's a whole other conversation. My point
Plato
is,
advocated book burning.
fascism as a whole really loves to hone in on small portions of society. And right now, I'm sorry, I'm going to outright call you a fascist.
Oh, no.
And say
Oh,
that
heaven.
what you're
Heaven
saying
forfend.
is hate speech. What you're calling for is an eradication of an entire community of human beings that deserve
Just because
to
you say
exist,
that doesn't make it
deserve
true.
to have rights, that deserve
They do
kindness
deserve
and
to have rights.
respect.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
And
I totally
you,
agree.
as a
I think you're very disrespectful to them by lying to them. I think lying is very disrespectful.
Oh.
Yeah.
Guys, do you feel like I'm lying to you? Okay, just want to make sure.
But you are. You know, I guess you know what? You might not be lying in that you might be confused yourself, and lying is an intentional is telling an intentional untruth.
So I also want to talk about when we're talking about puberty blockers and these long-term effects that actually haven't been studied. There are genuinely no long-term studies on puberty blockers that have been repeated enough to be accepted by the American Academy of Pediatrics. I grant
that it's hard to find data on
by
these
the
things,
American Academy of clinical endocrinologists who are the clinical experts.
But the data that we do have persuaded even people who formerly advocated puberty blockers to recognize that they are not totally reversible.
But they haven't, because I literally can. I'm sorry, we can fact check this at home, but I counted before I came in here 13 different governing bodies of medical professionals who all support unanimously access to puberty blockers and gender affirming care.
Right, but I just named you 3 whole nations that don't support it anymore. Who previously did, like Sweden was the most probably pro-trans country in the world.
How many countries are there?
There are how many countries that believe in transgenderism? Not that many. Not that many that believe in transgenderism.
Access to puberty blockers. That's okay.
All right. All on your own. You got it.
Thank you. Whoa, look at all the support coming from Indy. I really appreciate it. I just find it interesting how usually this is Matt Walsh stick from y'all's place, and it seems like you're trying to leech on it from a lot of the media attention that you got from the transgenderism should be eradicated. Do you want to talk a little bit more about why a woman should be doing that instead of a man like Matt Walsh?
People don't usually confuse me for Matt Walsh. They usually confuse me for Rachel Maddow. But she didn't come here.
Well, you present very feminine, which is why I feel like it's weird that you keep calling yourself like he or this term Michael.
Well,
I still have yet to see a birth certificate.
I'm glad that
you
recognize that there are stereotypical behaviors of men and women, and that they maybe ought to behave in those ways.
That's what a social role is. It's performative characteristics. So it looks like we're agreeing.
I don't.
What I don't agree with though is that you're saying again these specific. Biological essentialism, which you cannot prove right now.
I wouldn't call myself a biological essentialist.
You said things like chromosomes, genitals are the only things that can determine what people can perform.
I've never said that. When did I say that?
What do you mean? We can rewind the prompts. You guys can go back in the
please
video.
Do. Good luck. Good luck doing that.
What have you said then?
I agree with you that there is a social and performed aspects to gender. In fact, I agree that there is a distinction to be had between sex and gender. Judith Butler goes a little wrong. I guess my point is that pro-trans people say that when you are a man, your body is that of a man, but you desire to behave in a way that is not like a man, that you should do that. And then actually you should change your body often to be more like the opposite sex. And I guess my argument is...
Well, that's not something that's advocated for people who all experience gender dysphoria. There are certain instances where the medical community will say that this does improve people's quality of life.
You don't think that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgeries are advocated for?
Let's stop doing this.
Well, I'm glad you know my name.
I've never said that.
You did just say that.
I am being respectful this time.
Well, that's good.
Because I want to, just respect it and show that it's not something that has to be proven on a piece of paper the way that we engage as a dialogue. So I'm just choosing to use the respectful terms that you've said, even though you still haven't proved that your name's Michael, by the way, which is a little bit weird. We'll continue to go back to not all medical professionals will advocate for gender affirming care for every person that's trans. Oftentimes it's a social transition where people are just changing their name or the way that they're dressed. So let's just have some appropriate respect.
But that's a bad idea too.
Let's just treat people like society.
That's a bad idea
Let's just treat people societally.
Because that's correlated with all sorts of terrible outcomes, and it's contrary to reality.
Is it?
So to your point,
wearing certain clothes is contrary to reality.
Yeah,
if you go to
behaving
Scotland
like
and see
a woman,
kilt,
if you're a man,
are you crying because you see a man in a kilt?
Kilts are very masculine.
Oh wow, there you go.
I'm willing to.
Gender roles can change; they're malleable. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying
there's not something intrinsic that says I should wear this.
Not exactly. Fashions can change, but I'm willing to go further than maybe some of my friends and colleagues and conservatives, which is that I don't think that gender is just your biology, because I don't think a human person is just a body. I'm not a materialist. I think that we're body and soul. I think that
so that goes back to, again, you arguing from a religious perspective, which you have an American right to have,
or a
but it's an
philosophical
American right to have
perspective,
that lack of religious perspective too, and that's what I'm trying to be here. I'm a patriotic man, Michael.
Right, but the
USA.
But I guess
should we have the freedom of expression? The First Amendment. That's what it's all
we don't
for.
have. There's no First Amendment right to obscenity, first of all. But second of all,
it's obscene for me to wear a dress.
But the view
isn't it weird because I have XX chromosomes, Michael?
Yeah.
Big surprise.
You have XX chromosomes.
Yeah. Would you call me she/her now?
I don't. I'll
Oh, it looks like
I'll defer to you. I don't remember your name. What is your name?
What would you say my name is?
I don't know.
You can determine. You just said easy. It's very easy to determine.
Well, I could say if you look more like a man or a woman. But what is your name? You look more like a man.
Okay.
Without
I
question.
appreciate it.
You certainly do.
Thank you so much. Because I don't. I have XY chromosomes, by the way. But you little flustering right there is a little bit. It shows that you're like freaking out on trying to figure out what objective truth is.
I don't think I'm freaking out. I think that people are intentionally confusing people in public, which is one of the problems of transgender.
Confusing.
Yeah, for a man to pretend to be a woman. That would be one example.
You've been saying that you're a man. I'm not seeing any masculine qualities, but I'll still call you a man for the rest of this video.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad you do. But because actually, our identity as people doesn't depend upon some kind of performance. I don't need to wear a tank top or look like a big He-Man. There's just an objective reality to it.
Performative characteristics. That is something that you just said. Rewind again, like 20 seconds.
There is, if you would listen to what I've said, there is obviously a socially enacted aspect to sex that pro-trans people who are operating off of a religious, or rather irreligious, Gnostic anthropology say that when there is a distinction between the two, one should favor the fantasy over the biological reality. And what I'm saying is when there's a distinction between the two, which does sometimes happen, then if you're a fella, you should just act like a man.
Yeah, and you acting like a man, again, is going to change depending on what the cultural context it is that you're residing in.
Yeah, not all that much.
As you just said.
Not all
you
that
just
much.
said, if I wore
We're not seahorses. I'm never going to give birth.
You'd be like, yo, that's a little bit weird, but just because I have a plaid pattern on it, you're going to say it's masculine to wear a kilt. That's something that just
the Scots are pretty masculine, yeah.
It's
fashions change. Fashions change, but human nature does not.
And that's something that you just can't change, Michael, but I appreciate it. I'm sorry, Mindy.
Mindy, huh. All right. Say it again. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Hey, before we go any further, we want to take a moment to say thanks so much to Straight Arrow News for powering the fact checks in this video. Straight Arrow News is an app and website that is on a mission to raise the bar on journalism in a time of media bias and mistrust. Their team of journalists believe that unbiased news should be the standard and not just the exception, so they report down the middle with facts, delivering news without bias, filter, or spin. Plus, their Media Mist tool allows you to discover news that's being underreported or not even reported at all by different sides of mainstream media. That's why we're so happy to be partnering with Straight Arrow News. The work they're doing gives us a complete picture of the news straight from our phones and tablets with their app. Go to san.com/surrounded or click the link in the description to check it out. By clicking that link, you're not just supporting this channel, you're also supporting a group of journalists that are raising the bar on news and focusing on serving you unbiased, straight facts. Thanks again to Straight Arrow News for partnering with us on this episode. Now let's get into it.
My next claim is that LGBTQ identity is a social contagion. We lost a chair.
Hi.
Hello?
I guess I'd like to start off this conversation by pointing out some other people that share your opinion that LGBTQ plus people are a social contagion.
I didn't say that. I said LGBTQ identity is a social contagion.
Yeah, because that's a huge difference.
I think it's a major difference, yeah.
Yeah. You know who else also would agree with you?
I'm guessing you're going to say Hitler or something.
And all of his friends. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Good job.
Do you know Hitler also drank water?
Okay.
Do you drink water? Do you drink water? Be honest.
Do you want to know how much water I drink? Is that really the topic of this conversation?
Well, no, but it's a comparison between you and Hitler. And that's very scary, apparently.
Well, we're not
and
talking
pertinent,
about
apparently.
consumption of aqua. We're talking about ideologies.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And there has been a large uptick in people who share the opinion that certain ideologies, certain racial backgrounds are contagions. And there's a lot of danger in that. I am a nurse. My background and my education has provided me with the privilege of being exposed to people of all backgrounds, people of all belief systems. I think that if we're going to talk about social contagions, I think we should start off by the ones that have positive and negative impacts on society, because I could just as much say that hatred and bigotry are social contagions, that toxic masculinity is a social contagion. That
Are you saying that I'm a sort of pinnacle of masculinity?
No, I wouldn't say that.
All right, then I'm not toxic.
Perfect, yeah, okay. I could also say a myriad of other things. When you say that LGBTQ plus identities are a social contagion, would you then venture to also say that you would like to see people like me and the rest of the people in this room eradicated?
No, that would be quite a leap. I'm just.
Is it a leap?
I think so. I'm
Okay.
observing a pretty basic social phenomenon, which is that in the 90s, about 1 to 3% of Americans identified as LGBTQ. And then in 2012, about 3.5% identified as LGBTQ. Fast forward to 2020, it was about 5.5%. Fast forward to 2024, so really, really close, it was 7.2%. And now there's a number from NBC News, says that 30% of Gen Z identifies as LGBTQ. So I guess my observation is just either there's something in the water turning the frogs gay, or there's something, yes,
okay.
which actually, oddly enough, there was a Yale study that kind of proved that, but it's a topic for another
Luckily,
time.
they got rid of the DEI program at the EPA that was turning the frogs gay.
This is good. That's good. The EPA also discovered that. We're getting sidetracked. Either there's something in the water turning the frogs gay, or there's something social and cultural going on that would lead to that huge increase in the number of people. There was a study just came out of University of York yesterday that showed a 50-fold increase in children who think they're the wrong gender over the last 10 years. How do you explain that if it's not a social phenomenon?
I would love to speak to that actually, because one of the jobs I've worked as a nurse is as a nurse at a summer camp for trans teens. I've worked with hundreds of trans teens. I think that when we're talking about how people identify, how comfortable they are to identify the way that they identify, and their ability to assert themselves in that identity, the social environment that surrounds them can either hinder that or allow them to embrace themselves.
So are you saying, I'm trying
Can I
to
finish my point, please?
I'd like you to, yeah.
Thank you. When we are talking about people's ability to assert themselves and their identity, if they are growing up in a society that tells them that they don't exist, that their marriages don't exist, that they're a social contagion, do you think that psychologically that person would feel empowered to assert
they're not a
themselves?
social contagion. The fact of identifying as LGBTQ is a social contagion.
You can go back to semantics all you want.
Semantics means meaning. So if we want to understand what we mean, we actually do have to delve into semantics.
I'm going to go back to my point. Thank you.
Let's try.
If someone is surrounded by people like you who are saying that their identity is invalid, that their existence isn't valid, that their marriages are not valid.
No, I wouldn't say their existence isn't valid. Who would say that?
Do you think that that allows them to be in an environment where they feel empowered to do so? They feel empowered to be themselves, to admit to society around them, this is who I am.
Yeah, but that isn't who they are. If a little boy says he's a little girl, he isn't really a little girl, he's a little boy. And I think it's actually very harmful to tell a little boy who thinks that he's a little girl that he's really a little girl.
Why?
And my evidence for this would be that transgender identity, which has skyrocketed, especially among young people, is tied to vastly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. The transgender suicide rate, as I suspect you know, is between 32 and 50%. You are flipping a coin. If you tell someone to embrace his transgender identity, you are basically flipping a coin with his life. And so I think that's very harmful to that person, and it's not founded on human nature.
I would shake your hand, but I don't really want to.
You don't want to. All right, that's okay. It's close. So the next time.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good, I'm Jeremiah.
Jeremiah, Michael.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of define terms a little bit. You mentioned social contagion. Contagion how?
Meaning, well, going back, there's a good study by Dr. Lisa Littman that showed, this was back in 2018, that peer influence is one of the great drivers of transgender identity. So that's how it's a social contagion. People look around at their peers and they see them identifying as LGBTQ, and that makes them much more likely to identify that way themselves.
Okay, so by that definition, because I'm thinking contagion makes it sound like it's a disease, right?
Yeah, it's
like
not a
COVID.
disease, but it's not good. It leads to lots of bad health outcomes.
There we
for
go.
them.
So you're saying bad. And I think you mentioned earlier, you said, oh, kids are more likely to attempt suicide if they come out as trans, right?
Anyone, not just kids, anyone who identifies as transgender is significantly more likely to be suicidal. Orders of magnitude more likely to be suicidal.
Let me focus on where my expertise is. I'm a therapist, and the thing is, when kids and adults get mental health care, they're less likely to attempt suicide. Furthermore, if kids have to hide their identity because of people that are ultra conservative and try and repress someone's sexuality and or identity those kids and adults are more likely to attempt suicide.
That is not backed up by the scientific literature, I'm
What
afraid.
scientific literature are you talking about? There is lots of scientific literature.
I'm happy to answer that
actually
question.
backs up
Do you want me to
mine.
answer your question?
Well,
You asked me what scientific literature I'm talking about. I'm happy to answer that question, but maybe you don't want me to.
Well, it's not because of that only. It's because you are going to pick stats that support your point of view. We all know that data can be put
What if
on
I
both
picked
sides.
What if I picked the largest data set on transgender outcomes ever compiled?
No,
would that be helpful?
I want to hear more about how you are actually thinking about this.
Well, I'm thinking about this based on the science that you won't let me talk about.
Well, no,
because you know it undercuts your argument.
No, I think that where I'm getting at is that you're thinking about how you view personally because of your transphobic and homophobic views of yourself.
Hold on. Where did that come from? I'm just trying to tell you what the science says, and you're trying to just call me phobic and this phobic. I don't know. I'm happy to give you.
But you are,
I'm happy
though.
to give you an answer.
You are though.
No,
okay,
I don't have an irrational fear of an imaginary identity.
It's so. It's okay.
I have a rational fear of it becoming a social problem. But.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
I think because initially the prompt was about LGBTQIA identity, and we're really hyper focusing on that trans identity.
We can do any identity.
Absolutely. So I kind of just want to speak from my own anecdotal experience. I'm not here to debate, change anybody's mind. What I can tell you is that pre-transition, all of the mental health issues I had, all of that was starting before I transitioned.
Yeah.
Since I transitioned, started my hormones, have done all the right things, gotten my gender affirming care, all of these issues, problems I've had have alleviated.
How long ago did you do it?
About a year ago.
Yeah. That is also backed up in the scientific literature, that there can be short-term improvements to mental health, or even a short-term euphoria. But the long-term, I mean, people are laughing at this.
Well, because it's ridiculous.
Well, okay. So in 2019, the American Journal of Psychiatry published a study giving the largest data set on
so
transgender
anecdotal
identity.
experience doesn't matter at all.
It does, but it doesn't matter as much as data, because data is just a lot of anecdotes, many. So it looked at much longer term analysis, and what it tried to argue was that the transgender hormones and surgical treatments did improve outcomes on anxiety and suicide and depression. But they had to issue a correction very quickly because there was a methodological error, and when they admitted this.
I'm not interested in talking about policy. I'm really talking about.
But I'm talking about science, not policy.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm sitting here in front of you as a trans woman
Yeah.
who is telling you that every issue I've had before, mental health problem before I started my hormones, is gone.
And I'm telling you, statistically, it's going to come back.
You're wrong. Like you can't predict the future.
The science.
Like I don't know.
I'm not predicting the future, and maybe you'll be one of the lucky few. I guess my point is this. If you look at not just one anecdote, and actually your anecdote actually fits into the scientific literature.
It doesn't.
It does. Because,
it doesn't. I've been a trans person since I was a child. I've experienced the gender dysphoria my entire life. And the second I got on my hormones, everything started improving.
You started doing it a year ago.
About a year ago. I've also been socially out as a gender ambiguous person since I was 22.
Sure.
You don't know anything about my medical history.
I'm not claiming to know anything about your medical history.
You're trying to claim that you know about my medical history.
I certainly have not. When have I done that?
Then in the future, I'm not going to be okay.
No, I'm not saying that either. I'm saying statistically, you probably won't. I'm saying that the largest data set.
How many trans women do you know? Trans people, I'd love to know.
Apparently not enough.
Clearly not enough, babe.
What I'm telling you, and I know you're talking over me because you don't want to hear this, but what I'm telling you is the largest data set, the largest study ever conducted to follow the long-term outcomes of transgender identifying people, found that not only did their suicide rates and depression not improve, their anxiety actually went up. And so what I'm telling you is, if you're feeling a kind of euphoria that pretending that you were the opposite sex has made you feel better.
Pretending I'm the opposite sex.
Yes, you are pretending.
Lovely.
And I don't think that it's respectful to lie to people.
I'm pretending pretty good, don't you guys think? Yeah?
You're not pretending pretty good. You're not.
I think everybody else here.
I think you might be really angry with me for telling you the truth.
I feel like I'm remaining quite.
You're remaining relatively calm, but I think you're
angry.
I think you're probably not thrilled that I'm telling you that you're not really.
I don't care.
Do you not? You're sitting here talking to me. It seems like you care a lot.
I'm here to give context to a conversation that you clearly know nothing about. You don't know any trans. Do you know personally any trans people? You never really.
I know a number of people who identify as trans.
And so they're not.
I know some who have gone back the other way because it was ruining their lives.
I'd love to hear.
Yeah, you'd love to hear about the people who regretted it.
I'd love to hear who they are.
Oh, I don't know. I was just with a couple of them the other night
Okay,
at
what are
a
their
political
names?
party. Well, Chloe Cole would be probably the most famous example.
Okay.
I don't
And
know if
how's
you've
she
seen her
doing?
work. She's doing much better now. I've interviewed a number of people who have detransitioned on this show. The only reason I'm mentioning the detransitioners is you might think that it's really nice to affirm you in your delusion that you're the opposite
It's not
sex.
nice. It's I have to do it. If
You
I
don't have to do
didn't
it.
start my gender hormone therapy, anything like that, I wouldn't be here right now having
Why?
this conversation with you because of gender dysphoria.
Because what? You would have...
I just think that there are a lot of avenues that could have happened if I didn't
Such as?
start my hormone. I just don't think that the broadness that you're bringing to the table right now
I'm
is
bringing
useful.
scientific specificity and
Also,
logical
you told
precision.
Me you've met a detransition person, but I'm
A number
asking
of
if you
them.
know a transgender woman.
I know people who identify
Okay.
as transgender.
And how are they doing?
Not well.
Really?
Yeah. And statistically, it's a good line. That was off camera. They said because they know me. Statistically, 32 to 50% of people who identify as trans will kill themselves, and that's really bad. And I think that if there's anything we can do to improve
But do we
that
know
number,
about like their access that they have to hormone therapy? Do we know about any access to medical care?
yeah, it doesn't.
Okay, what is it?
It doesn't improve. That's what I was trying to tell you about the study.
I'm waiting.
The suicide rates don't improve after they access all of that supposed
Where did you
care.
get that from? I'm very interested.
From the American Journal of Psychiatry.
Finally. Hi, Michael.
Hello. How are you?
Gilbert. Nice to meet you.
Hey, nice
I
to
do
meat
watch you a lot, actually.
Thank you. Thank you for
course, you're
watching me.
welcome.
You have
Yeah.
great taste in podcasts.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, LGBTQ identity being a social contagion. Your statement was not that it can be. You said that it is.
Yes.
Right? I might be willing to agree with you that it can be, right? Because socially, sometimes people are like, well, I feel more at home in this community, whatever. Is it your belief that it's that every person who is gay or lesbian or bisexual, trans, well, actually, let's go just to the gay, because I'm gay.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about that. Yeah. I just outed myself. I think everybody knew that. Obvious. But do you believe, this isn't controversial, but that's why we're here. Do you believe that I'm choosing to be gay?
Oh, no, well, so you make a good point, because obviously it couldn't be a social contagion all the way down, because at some point, there's got to be the first gay guy.
Right.
I don't know the story of the first gay guy, but no, I think it's entirely possible that there could be either some environmental factor that inclines one to have same-sex attraction, or even potentially a genetic factor, though they've never discovered the so-called gay gene. But that is different from LGBTQ identity. And it can be in a few different ways. One could either, if one has these same-sex attractions, could still marry a woman, or could be celibate, or could just not, Or
do you think that's ethical for a gay man to marry a woman, to take that spot in her life that could be going to a straight man? That's not loving.
Well,
as a Christian, I'm a Christian.
You should maybe be honest. I wouldn't lie to your wife or anything.
But I'm gay. We're never going to be into this. I'm never going to be into this. I'm going to hold my breath and all that. But let's do that so that I can get. You're okay with that?
Maybe you should not get married. I'm not encouraging that you do.
I don't think that's a loving thing to do, Michael.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that anyone has to do that. But that's one thing that one could do, or one could just do
You think it's an option? I mean, it happens.
Yeah, plenty of guys.
I know, of course, especially in the church. A lot of closeted gay men are marrying women. I think we know that. Right. Do you think that that's the correct thing to do, though? Is that ethical to do to that woman, to take that away from her?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're going to fulfill the responsibilities of a husband and you're
what are those
honest with
responsibilities?
her, I don't know, provide, keep a roof over their heads, have children,
So be her
raise
father.
the children.
Okay, the children part.
No, don't be your father.
Okay.
Don't be your
Well,
father.
you said, you have the provision. Okay, I can do that. But you said have a children. How can I have a child with her?
You would, do you want me to spell it out? I don't.
As a gay man, how can I have a child with her?
Well, if, listen, so I lived in New York, I lived in LA, I went to the gayest university in the world. I know a disproportionate number of guys who are a little light in the loafers. Some of them probably could marry a woman, maybe some of them could not, so they don't have to.
It's external for you then. As long as it appears to be a certain way, it doesn't matter what's going on the inside. Is that what you're telling me?
No, you're asking me how can a man and a woman make a baby, even if the guy's not that into it?
Yeah,
And I
but
said, I don't know, your mileage may vary.
Dated a marriage. That's what I'm trying to get to the heart of the issue, quite literally. The heart of a gay person to be ethical and to live their life ethically.
I don't think your sexual attractions constitute the entirety of your being.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But in this
then I don't
context-
think that's the heart of a gay person.
But
I think it's
but
just
it
it's
is
an
part
aspect
of my
you.
identity.
It's an aspect of you.
Your prompt is about identity.
Yeah,
right?
but I guess I would go even further. I know guys who are, they didn't marry women and they, hang out just themselves and everything.
Okay.
And but they wouldn't call themselves LGBT activists. They don't wave the rainbow flag.
Right.
They think that movement really doesn't speak for them.
I agree. I understand.
And
understand
so
that.
I think that would be a distinction.
Yes.
In that
Okay.
kind of social contagion.
Okay, so we have some middle ground then. So
Yeah.
somebody can be gay, but not make it this activism part.
Yeah, that the identity is actually different from, as a point that you've explained very well, that others were missing, I think. It can be an aspect of your desire or whatever. It doesn't have to be your identity, which that has clearly become a social contagion.
The totality of your identity, but it is part of your identity, Michael. My being gay will never change, so it is part of who I am.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you don't need to like shack up with a man. You can. I'm not saying you can't.
So you
but,
think that I should be celibate?
Well, I'm Catholic, so I would recommend chastity and all the rest. But
Right.
that's up for you to decide. I'm not saying you have to do that. You could, for all of human history, fellas have done odd things together.
Okay. It was a pleasure, Michael.
Such a pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Frank Rodriguez.
Frank, pleasure to meet you. I like that flag pin.
Thank you. I'm actually a big fan of yours.
Thank you very much.
I subscribe.
Thank you.
I've worked with our government from Hawaii to Florida, passing conservative legislation.
Love it.
And I just have a question for you. Do you think that the way that you're presenting the information here today is counterintuitive to the people in this room? To get them to vote in a certain way that helps our party?
Am I winning votes for the Republicans right now? I don't know. I'm not
with how you do your content and how you project your advocacy.
I think I'm fairly persuasive, but my goal right now
Well, no,
is
you-
not
no,
to
no,
win
no.
votes for the
You know
Republican
that you're
Party.
not. Hold on.
Hold on. Well,
There's only a
I'm
minute because
trying to answer your question.
You've already lied. You know that you're not because you've been in here triggering people based on the terminology that you use. I used to be like you. When I was a first
You used to tell the truth in plain language?
I used to tell people things just to trigger them.
I'm not saying
because that's
anything.
what you do. Now,
that is a totally false accusation. You're accusing me of using
I'm not accusing you. I can
needlessly
prove it in this
provocative
room what you've
language.
done.
No, I might be.
So why
saying,
did you use the word contagion?
Why LGBT? Because it is
No,
contagious.
not LGBT. I want to know specifically why you chose the word contagion.
I said social contagion because it's contagious.
Okay.
That's why.
Does
it's my
the word
precise
contagious
meaning.
have a positive or negative connotation to it?
It's a negative connotation.
Thank you. So you chose negative verbiage.
Yes, I think the
on
LGBT.
purpose,
I think the
on
spread of
purpose.
LGBTQ
And
identity
this is, what
is
really
a
bothers
bad
me, 'cause
thing.
I don't
Yeah.
agree with a lot of the people that sit in this circle. I agree a lot with you.
Thank you.
But it's people like you that I have to defend when I stare at these people in their face, trying to convince them to vote for our party.
Yeah, but I
And
can't-
so
I
when
can't
you
lie
choose
just because
these
you wanna
words,
win votes
it's
for
not mine.
Republicans.
It's about meeting people where they're at. That's why
I'm happy to do
I don't
that.
think that you do this to actually change these people's minds. I think you do this to sit in that seat for clicks and views. Why do you choose
I'm
this
happy to answer.
vitriol language?
I'm happy to answer.
Please.
Well, I'm using precise language because I want to get to the heart of the matter and not be wishy-washy and mealy-mouthed
Is
and
there
not
only one
understand
road
each
to
other.
that? When you choose to stare at these
And
people
tell
in
them
their
the truth
face
with love?
and try to convince them that you're right,
Yeah.
you choose vitriol language
what
to trigger
what
them.
is vitriolic? What
The
have I
word-
said that's
so
vitriolic?
You're not an idiot, Michael. You're
Well,
pretty
thank you.
smart.
I
I've
appreciate
watched you
that.
for a long
I
time.
appreciate that.
You used the word contagion in your statement to provide a negative outcome to
What
the
word
people
would
in
you
the room.
prefer to make my point?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
I wish you had an
That is-
answer.
that is a very good
Maybe
question.
you would have
I
chosen the
say- I would
precise word that I
say-
used.
I would say
Yeah.
that LGBT is something that can be taught. That's what I would say.
LGBT, well, LGBT can be taught, but I'm saying the spread of the identity is not merely taught with formal pedagogy, but it spreads through mimesis. Would you prefer that I use that language?
No, what I
don't
would
think that's
say
going to
is-
resonate
is-
with anybody.
What I would say is I have to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
And I don't think you choose to do that. I think you choose for this clickbait bullshit.
Do you?
Because at the end of the day, I have to stare. These are the people I advocate here in Los Angeles because I have to defend actions like yours.
What actions are you so upset about?
I'm upset.
That I hold
I'm very
the view.
passionate. Don't mistake my passion for upset.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. A pleasure. Yes, thank you. I have one on me, actually. My next claim is that pride parades should be banned.
I'm so fast, you guys.
That was fast.
Hi.
Hello?
Nice to meet you, Ryan.
You as well.
So, go on.
I think they ought to be banned.
Go on.
That's my
Why?
claim. Well, because they're disgusting, and I don't think that my grandmother or my kids or even myself should be forced to see these obscene displays in public.
Fascinating. When were you forced last to go to a pride parade?
Well, if I'm to walk down Main Street, in many cities in this country, I would be forced for much of the month of June. It seems to have metastasized, so it's not just a day, it's a week, it's a month, it's 2 months. I would be forced to see these kinds of displays, unless I wanted to remain a shut-in and see the public square,
So are there any
which I don't
other
want to do.
things that happen in public that you find objectionable that you don't want to have to be exposed to?
Yeah.
Like what?
Women driving too slowly in front of me, that bothers me. But I'm not going to take away women's driver's licenses. But I would say, like the 2024 Pride Parade in San Francisco, when 2 grown men were urinating on each other in a kiddie pool in front of kids, I think that should be banned. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Well, look, I want to make a distinction here between that way. By the way, that is the thing you have to
They
be
do say it's wholesome.
Yeah, that's
they
not.
do say it's wholesome.
Yeah, no.
There are a lot of
I
examples.
got to give you this though. You
Yeah.
are so good at redirecting 3% in the middle of someone else's good point, and I would love to
Am
do
I?
less.
I'm waiting for some good points, but please enlighten me.
I got you. So the concept of pride is a lot larger than extreme things you might see on the outlier of the scale of things that happen on Pride. Now, I will grant you that there have been things that happen at Pride, like many other kinds of festivals, that maybe you don't want your kids exposed to, which is why you don't take your kids to them. But
No, but
Pride
they're
is,
often
but I'll
marketed
let you
as
know,
family-friendly,
well,
like the West
I'll let
Hollywood
you-
one.
Let me finish. Pride as a whole is about a community of people who have been denied, like you're real good at, existence of for most of time.
Denied existence? What does
Yes,
that
yeah.
mean?
Okay, fine. Public existence. We've been denied the access to being ourselves in public. So, which is an essential thing. So Pride celebrations are essentially an act of resistance to that and an opportunity for us to come together and be seen, which many of us don't feel safe doing alone. Now, on the corners of things like Pride, sometimes something happens that I don't want to see.
Sometimes on the main stage.
Sure. Listen, I'm not saying objectionable things never happen.
Yeah.
But you make
They often happen, actually.
No. Wait, you don't spend a lot of time at Prides, do you?
I don't, but I read the news and I see the main streets of cities.
Well, all right. Let me just be clear as somebody who has been to many.
Yeah.
That what you're describing is statistically insignificant. It is
It's significant to the people who have to see the
what you're
obscenity.
describing. The occurrences are statistically insignificant. So you're taking this thing that happens like 0.0002% of the time and applying it to the
seems
whole
like
thing.
a little bit more.
I know you think that, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you you're wrong.
What's your evidence that I'm wrong? Because I can cite to you all the examples.
Sure, and I can cite to you a bajillion examples of inconsequential pride parades. That goes both ways.
Of inconsequential?
Inconsequential. Didn't it happen? It went. Nothing crazy happened.
Maybe.
And nobody cared.
Just within the last 2 years. I mentioned
Yeah.
the San Francisco thing, which you'll say, well, that's something else. Okay.
It is.
Well, New York City, when the naked guys are riding on the bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Minneapolis Pride. You had a guy twerking in his underwear in front of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Tim Walz showed up to that parade. Yeah, happily, I'm not a Minnesota citizen. If you look at, even in West Hollywood, not too far from where we are now, at a supposedly family-friendly Pride event, there was a man, almost naked, who was being choked and whipped by a guy wearing leather, almost like he was a member of the Biden administration. It was totally obscene and inappropriate.
So I hear your point.
I could go on.
I know you could go on. And here's the thing that I find really interesting about this. You have great anecdotes. Anecdotes are not data.
Well, you don't
Now-
have data either.
Well, the difference between us is I'm not trying to pretend I have specific data. I don't. I'm telling you, if you take the lived experiences of these 20-something people who are all telling you,
Which are anecdotes.
yes, more than yours.
Okay.
But here's
How
the
are they
thing.
more anecdotal than
Well,
mine? They were just
by
anecdotes.
Volume, by volume.
By volume.
Yes.
Oh,
But
God.
here's the thing.
We need to get more
Well-
conservatives into this room. I agreed to come into a room surrounded by 20 libs.
Here you are.
Right.
You have a point that things happen that you don't like to see.
That are obscene.
Sure. But you are not speaking as in reference to the majority of what Pride is. Now, we can disagree about that, I'm right, but if your contention is, well, I disagree, most of it's obscene, there's nothing to talk about. You're just wrong.
So would you agree with me? Oh, you're out. All right. You got it. All right.
I feel as though a lot of your claims today have been backed by this energy that you just want to erase LGBTQI plus people and our history.
Where do you get that from?
From your perspective on a lot of the trans
Because I'll tell you what, all I've been doing, I've just been coming here and citing historical examples and citing a lot of scientific studies and telling you explicitly that I'm talking about an ideology that I think is not conducive to the flourishing of anyone, and for the good of everyone, including you guys, I would like to see a restoration of sensibility. And every time I say something like that, you say, nah, man, I just kind of feel the vibes that you hate us and want to erase us all. And I don't know where you're getting that from.
Then let's join your side and let's say, you know what, let's say everyone should follow your lead. And let's say, as a society, we should ban pride. And let's say, as a society, we should eradicate trans people. In
Transgenderism, again, I think you're being obtuse here.
Transgenderism encapsulates everything LGBTQI+. Just in
that isn't true. It's just an idea that a boy can become a girl, which isn't true. And I think we should forget about that so that people, including the ones who think that they're the opposite sex, can flourish again.
So you would agree with me when I say by eradicating transgenderism, you would also eradicate the history of trans people, just in general.
Well, you can read it. We can eradicate.
Here in this room today because of Black trans women and because of.
I am not in this room because of Black trans women. I can promise you.
Why are you in this room then?
Because I was invited on this podcast to explain
what exactly? The hate speech, the rhetoric that you spread on your little YouTube channel?
No, just to advocate truth and sensibility.
Truth and sensibility.
Reality.
The truth of the fucking matter is you're surrounded by 25 really proud LGBTQIA people who do not give a fuck about you.
You obviously do. You're here talking to me. What are you talking about? You obviously care what I have to say.
Because you give
You're
such
sitting
a hard
6 inches from me.
us.
I just want to be on YouTube.
Yeah, some just want to be on YouTube. No, I'll tell you what. Look, we can.
Obsessed, and it's harmful when in history, but also today. This month alone, our entire government is run by straight white men who are hurting these communities. And I know you live on a pedestal, and you were able to put on your little suit today and spray on your little cologne.
I didn't put on any cologne. That's just my musk. That's my natural musk. Wait, hold on.
Correction, you should have put on cologne.
Wow, real nice.
Exactly.
Real nice.
But now let's imagine a world where you had to put on a dress and you had to put on heels.
I'd prefer not to. Yeah, I don't think I would do that.
So what do you do about the people in society who have to put on their suit to live and who have to have a wife to live? Because
I don't understand what you're asking me.
People should. No matter what they feel deep inside, according to your views, people
I don't think
should.
anyone should be forced to be married or.
You're telling me you just spent your entire last 3 hours talking about how my people, men, should not be dressed in gowns.
Well, I think you're dressed fine. You're wearing a big
and so
T-shirt.
What if I wore
don't know, and I like your crucifix. I would discourage you.
The thong that I'm wearing underneath.
I don't need you to show me that.
Exactly.
I would suggest you not do that, but I don't really care that much.
So let's just go back to the point at hand.
Yeah. What is the point at hand?
Your idiotic claim that we should just stop LGBTQ pride.
No, I guess. You're out. You're out, pal. See ya. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Doing very well.
All right, great to speak with you.
The pleasure's all mine.
All right, so pride parades should be banned. That's your claim, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I can meet some middle ground with you. Sorry, guys. I think pride has kind of became a bad representation of what our community is.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not all just like sex toys and leather.
Yeah, right, right.
Unfortunately, which is why I think most conservatives kind of are completely on the other side. It's like the pendulum swing. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so like one side of the coin is pretty much that LGBT, we have fought so hard for our rights. We kind of leaned so far one way, whereas like now, we've kind of accepted too much, right? As far as like, we're so open-minded that
our brains fell out.
You could say that,
yeah.
In some aspect. However, it doesn't take away the fact that, there's still gay people that exist. I don't think pride parades should be banned. However, I think we should portray a different image of it.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. For all of history and everywhere in the world, there have been people who are a little odd, or they have desires that are not the mainstream. And so I get it. I'm not saying we need to like totally deny that or, toss people out of society or anything. It's just, I said we should eradicate the transgender ideology. Yeah, which is a false account of human nature. But I think you can. If you can separate the war on poverty from, a war on poor people, I think you probably could. Well, you had the most sensible take of anyone. I really, yeah, pleasure to speak to you. Yeah.
All right.
It wasn't even close. Pleasure to meet you. Hi.
Shelby. Okay, so is your main issue with the pride parades the nudity and obscenity?
The obscenity is a big issue with it. I also don't think that as a society we ought to be celebrating the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins, namely pride. Not even the sex stuff, but just pride.
Okay.
I just think that's kind of weird. You know, because we have, every time in America, we used to have celebrations of like Christmas or Easter or even Thanksgiving. And now those have been pushed out of the public square, and we've been told that we're a secular country and we're not. No, there have been many lawsuits in recent decades. And so we've been told that we're not permitted to have these kinds of big displays. But what has replaced the traditional liturgical calendar is this kind of secular liturgical calendar where now we celebrate the great feast of pride. And I just don't think one needs to feel pride in one's sexual behaviors.
Okay, but it's not just about sexual behavior, it's about love. It's about, I mean, I would say it's mainly about love. I don't go around talking about my sexuality in a form where I'm like, oh, I have sex with women. I say that I love women.
But you love your family, you love your neighbors, you love your friends. You don't have big parades for them. You're specifically talking about love in a romantic and, dare I suggest, sexual context.
Okay, so you think that they should be shut down just because you think that they are disgusting?
Well, I think they're legally obscene, so I think there's actually a legal predicate to shut them down. But I also think broadly they're just sort of disreputable and odd, and I don't think that that's the sort of thing we should celebrate on Main Street. Maybe on some sort of side street if you want to have a party.
Go. Like
Well, but I have a right to Main Street, you know, because I'm a citizen.
I mean, yeah, but you don't.
My grandma has a right to go to the grocery store and walk down the street and not be accosted.
Grocery stores.
Yeah, well, she
You
has the
don't
right
have to go to the
she has
ones
the
with
right to go to the
parades.
one that she likes downtown, you know. Yeah, oddly enough, I mean, I would actually, someone just suggested the KKK has a right to protest. I would be more willing to circumscribe the supposed free speech rights of people. But in that case, you know, courts have found that they have some right. But there's no right for, you know, leather daddies to smack each other in a kiddie pool or something.
But that's not everything that happens at Pride parades.
But
You're
it
taking
happens
one
so
single
consistently.
part.
But I'm citing examples from San Francisco, New York, Oslo, Toronto, Minneapolis, West Hollywood. At what point do we see a pattern here?
So there can be a pattern, but it doesn't mean that that's all that happens at these parades.
Well, I'm sure people make, you know, ham sandwiches too, but that's not the part that anyone has a problem with. It's the sexual displays. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've also said that correct me if I'm
No,
wrong.
people often aren't cited for lewd acts. But
Correct me
yes,
if I'm
continue.
wrong, but somebody else came up here and you said that you don't think that the obscenity and the pride can be separated. You don't think that that's something that people can do?
In principle, they could be separated, but even then it would raise the question, why are we celebrating one particular or several particular kinds of sexual arrangements? Why are we celebrating sexual arrangements at all
Because we're
on Main Street?
celebrating love. That's the thing. You take
Should we have a parade for the love I have for my Aunt Gertrude?
your aunt. Yeah, sure.
We should.
If you would feel.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think that deserves a parade down Main Street.
Okay, that's okay.
I think actually just if you're having a loving relationship or even a relationship you perceive as loving, you can just sort of enjoy that, and it doesn't need to become a big display down Main Street.
Okay. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Today.